Hello, my name is Key, and I am going to be presenting my older adult oral video interview synopsis. So the stage that me and the person I interviewed, her name is Amy, and she is 68 years old. The stage that we kind of landed on, just naturally, was stage 7, generativity versus stagnation. So this is Erik Erikson's psychosocial theory, and during this stage 7, the span is adulthood, right after young adulthood, so around 30 to anywhere from 65 to 70, basically whenever that person becomes focused on retirement. And the focuses of this stage and this time span is parenting and community, basically just getting outside of oneself and focusing on contributing back to society and the world at large. There were several important experiences that happened within this time frame. It's actually about 10 years within this time frame, within the span of stage 7, that all of these things happened. So it's very condensed, very eventful during this time. She was married. She gave birth to 4 children. She went back to school, so higher education. She had marital struggles. She got divorced. She achieved multiple graduate degrees, and she solidified her career. A lot to have happened in about 10 years. So some challenges and accomplishments that came within this time. As I mentioned before, marital issues were some challenges. Bi erasure, multiple pregnancies while in school and working, and divorce. We'll go into all of those in more detail. Accomplishments. She achieved several degrees, found new communities, and became an active social contributor and educator, as well as a fierce mama bear. So again, we're in stage 7, and the crisis that seemed to fit the most for what Amy was dealing with is loss of community. It actually could be described as losses of communities. She lost community by getting married. She lost community by getting divorced. There were a lot of loss of community and connections that happened during this time. So I would say that would be the psychosocial crisis that Amy was dealing with. Some biopsychosocial factors, so things that Amy had to deal with just because of who she is, where she was born into, who she was born to, and the world in which she was born into. So the first one would be gender, and with that is kind of a mixture of religion. So she was raised in a conservative religious family where simply because she was born as the female sex, her value both internally and externally, so intrinsic to who she is as a person and externally to who she is contributing to society, she was taught what all of that value was wrapped up into becoming a wife and a mother. Not in being a good person, but in being a good wife and a good mother. Her sexual orientation, she was born bisexual, and that part of her was ignored and denied by her family and the community that she was raised within, and that is part of the bi erasure that happened just simply because of who she was born to and where she was born. So the psychosocial crisis, as I mentioned before, is loss of community. So when she got married at the age of 30 and had multiple kids, her family and friends praised her husband for being a devoted father because he was the one who stayed at home with the kids while she was working and doing school full time at the same time. Also, while being pregnant and giving birth throughout these years. He was the one for some reason. He was the one who was given the praise and seen as this incredible person because he was there as a father. So even when he was running errands, so on a social level, even when he was running errands with his kids, their kids, he would get people wanting to take pictures with him and the kids because they thought it was so cute and amazing that he was out there running errands, doing things for their life with their children. On the flip side, she was told verbatim that she was abandoning her children. And this is by her family and friends. This is by the community into which she was born. Those people who are supposed to have her back. She was criticized for abandoning her children to work and go back to school. And when her husband at the time had an affair, they actually blamed her for working and going to school. They blamed her for his having an affair because she wasn't around. Okay, and because she got married at 30 and wanted a big family, as I mentioned, she was pregnant a lot at the time, so almost consistently through her 30s. She had 4 children in her 30s. And her husband didn't want to have sex with her while pregnant, so not only was he not engaging sexually with her, so he wasn't getting sexual satisfaction, she wasn't getting sexual satisfaction, and so neither of them were sexually satisfied, and he went out and had an affair. And again, she was blamed for that. They received shared custody of the 4 children, but Amy had them and still has them consistently most of the time, even though at that time she was working and going to school full time and he was not working or in school. So, talking again about the loss of community with the psychosocial crisis, she did not have a community from church. In the church community in which she was raised, she had gotten divorced. She had obviously been told that she was a bad mother, a bad wife, the cause of their divorce, all of these things. So that community was lost to her. And then going into any other religious community would be difficult for a couple of things. 1, divorce is frowned upon in religion. 2, she is an atheist, so that's a tricky one. But even if she wanted to try and garner a community in a different religion, she also is bisexual. And so in order to do that, it is hard with having gotten a divorce, and it is often hard to find a religious community that accepts queer folks. So she lost that community as well. On top of that, her sexual orientation had, kind of welcomed her into the family of the LGBTQ plus community, right? So there she was held, she was seen, she had a community, she had very good friends there. And then as soon as she married a man, that community and those friends rejected her as being straight. And which is a textbook, example of bi erasure. So not only was her sexual orientation erased before she got married, it was then erased after she got married, and she lost communities on both sides. And this was even more solidified when she got pregnant and became a quote-unquote breeder. So, I wanted to look at this from a totally different perspective than what she had been born into. So, I see all of the things that are challenges for her as being part of this view that she, as a woman, cannot be a good person. She has to be a good woman, and all that entails. There is no equality in the psychosocial factors we saw. There is no equality going on in the psychosocial crisis. There is a vast imbalanced and unequal perspective going on that is oppressive to her. And so I wanted to take a look at it from a way that rejects that patriarchal, male-dominated, male supremacist perspective. And radical feminism does just that. So taking a feminist theory lens on her psychosocial crisis, which again was the loss of community, and why that happened, we can look at it like this. As a pregnant woman, her husband would not engage in sexual activity with her. She didn't get sexually satisfied. He didn't get sexually satisfied because he would not do that. And he then went outside of their marriage, and she was blamed for it. And again, as a working woman and mother, she got the social blame for the dissolution of their marriage. Then, wildly, looking at it from a social perspective, as a spouse with an income, she was the one who had to pay alimony and child support. This meant that while she was working, going to school full-time, now trying to figure out childcare while she was doing all those things, she also had to pay him alimony and child support. Her ex-husband had to pay him that. And he continued to not work or work and not report it so that he would not have the alimony and child support payments from her stopped. So let's look at the resolution. Okay, so this loss of community. Very, very, very intense. And truly losses of communities. And how this crisis resolved. And we can look at it again through the feminist theory, which is that she is, as this very impressive person, persevered in her work and setting up her career through obtaining higher education degrees. And by degrees, I mean Master's in Family Therapy, a Master's of Education, a PhD in Clinical Psychology and Human Sexuality, a Sex Therapy certification, and she started her own business and her own practice as a sex therapist. She did all of this within 10 years. And she got her PhD while she was pregnant with her fourth child and started her practice at the same time. I mean, this is a very impressive person. And because of all of this and the fact that she persevered and did not lose sight of her values, she did not internalize that by erasure, she held on to it. Because of this, her children have been able to grow up with an incredibly strong mother as a model, a strong person as a model, someone who perseveres during oppression and abusive language and just emotional abuse from people who are supposed to have your back. And she has 2 kids who are in the LGBTQ plus community who, because she refused to internalize that by erasure, she is able to create a safe place for them, whereas they feel safe with her and they unfortunately don't feel safe with their birth father. So, amazing parent. She educates students on how to become excellent therapists and educators as a professor and an adjunct professor. She's taught for years. She is also able to help her clients achieve self-actualization and work through difficult times in their lives through her sex therapy practice. Additionally, she is active in her community and is speaking out against by erasure and in support of all folks under the LGBTQ plus umbrella. This is someone who has absolutely been able to reach generativity versus stagnation. She took all that she had been through and turned it into something absolutely amazing and is sharing that with the world. There are some limitations that I think in Erik Erikson's psychosocial theory, specifically about stage 7, generativity versus stagnation. I found it very difficult because this person, Amy, did, and I will say she had quite the extraordinary 30s, but looking at her life, I mean, she's done so much within her life, and just within those 10 years, she did a significant amount. So to have it be such a broad amount of time to look at makes it difficult you feel like you're leaving